"Give me the money now," my son-in-law screamed, slamming his $500,000 casino debt marker on the table. I just smiled calmly. Of course. They thought the old cowboy would always cave. By dawn, I'd sold my Texas ranch for millions and vanished forever. When they burst into the empty house and found only my goodbye letter, he howled in rage. She collapsed to the floor. They wanted my money. They got exactly what they demanded, just not the way they expected. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Morris Stanley. I'm 64 years old, and I've spent the last 38 years running a cattle ranch in Fredericksburg, Texas. Built it from nothing with my own 2 hands. Raised my daughter Jessica alone after her mother left when the girl was 12. Always thought hard work and honesty were enough to earn respect. Turns out I was wrong about a lot of things. Jessica wasn't always the person she is now. I remember her at 16, helping me fix fence posts in the summer heat, laughing at my terrible jokes. She'd bring me water during branding season, tell me about her dreams of becoming a teacher. Simple dreams, good dreams. Then 5 years ago, everything changed when she met Jeffrey Thompson at some charity gala in Austin. Jeffrey showed up wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. Financial consultant, he called himself. Investment advisor for some big firm. Had the kind of smile that looked practiced in a mirror. Shook my hand with just enough pressure to seem confident. Looked me in the eye just long enough to seem sincere. I saw through it immediately. But Jessica was already gone. 3 months later, they were engaged. The wedding was small. Jeffrey insisted on that. Intimate, he called it. His parents didn't attend. Business obligations, he explained. I paid for everything anyway. $23,000 for 200 guests. Jessica wore her grandmother's pearls. For a moment during the ceremony, she looked like my little girl again. Then Jeffrey whispered something in her ear, and she laughed in that new way she'd developed. Sharp, brittle, nothing like the girl who used to giggle at cartoons on Sunday mornings. They moved into my house temporarily, while they looked for their own place. That was 5 years ago. The temporary arrangement became permanent, so gradually I barely noticed. First, it was just weekends, then a few days a week. Then Jeffrey's clothes appeared in the guest room closet. Then Jessica stopped calling it Dad's house and started saying our house. The changes in her accelerated after that. Designer handbags appeared, Gucci, Prada, brands I recognized only from magazines in the dentist's waiting room. She started making comments about the smell of cattle, wrinkling her nose when I came in from the morning rounds. "You really should shower before breakfast, Dad," she'd say, not looking up from her phone. The phone that cost $1,200. Last Christmas, I invited them to dinner, just the 3 of us like we used to do. Jeffrey accepted, then called 2 hours before to cancel. Important client dinner, he explained. Jessica didn't even call herself. She texted, "Sorry, Dad, can't make it. Save us leftovers." I ate alone that night, looking at the empty chairs, wondering where I'd gone wrong. The disrespect became more obvious as time went on. Jeffrey would bring his friends to the ranch, show them around like he owned the place. I overheard him once standing by my workshop where I craft leather saddles and belts, my grandfather's hobby that I'd kept alive. "Yeah, the old cowboy makes these," Jeffrey said, laughing. "Cute, right? Like a museum exhibit that still moves." His friends laughed with him. Jessica stood there, silent, examining her manicure. 2 weeks ago, she forgot my birthday. Not a card, not a call, nothing. When I mentioned it the next day, she said, "Oh, was that Tuesday? We had a dinner reservation at that new steakhouse. You know, the one that got the Michelin star. It was incredible." The steakhouse was in Austin, 47 miles away. She'd driven past my ranch to get there. Everything came to a head on the evening of March 3rd. I was in my study, reviewing the ranch finances. The numbers were good. The ranch was worth approximately $2.8 million, and it was profitable, producing income. I'd built something real, something that would outlast me. Or so I thought. The door slammed open. No knock, no warning. Jeffrey strode in, his face red, his expensive suit rumpled. He threw something on my desk, a piece of paper. I picked it up slowly, examined it. A casino marker from the Venetian in Las Vegas. $500,000. Jeffrey's signature at the bottom, dated 2 weeks ago. "Give me the money now!" he screamed. Actually screamed, his voice cracking on the last word. "I need it today. Right now. This isn't a request." I looked up at him. His pupils were dilated, his hands shaking. Behind him, Jessica stood in the doorway, arms crossed. She didn't look surprised, didn't look sorry, just waiting, like this was a business transaction she'd already approved. "That's quite a sum," I said quietly. "How does a financial advisor lose $500,000 gambling?" "That's none of your business." Jeffrey's hand slammed down on the desk. "You're going to give me the money because you have it and I need it. It's that simple." I folded the marker carefully, set it down, looked at my daughter. "Jessica, you agree with this?" She shifted her weight, not meeting my eyes. "Dad, Jeffrey made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. You have the ranch, you have money. What else are you going to do with it?" Her voice had that tone, the one that suggested I was being unreasonable. Selfish, even. "I see." I stood up slowly. My knees cracked. 64 years of hard work announcing themselves. Jeffrey took a step back instinctively. Good. He should be nervous. "When do you need this by?" "Tomorrow morning," Jeffrey said. "I have people waiting. They're not patient people." "Of course," I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "Tomorrow morning I'll have everything ready." Jessica's face relaxed. Jeffrey's shoulders dropped. They actually thought it would be that easy, that I'd just hand over $500,000 because they demanded it. Because I was the old cowboy, the museum exhibit that still moved. "Thank you, Dad," Jessica said, already turning away. "We really appreciate it." They left. I heard their footsteps on the stairs, the bedroom door closing. Heard Jessica's laugh, light and relieved. Heard Jeffrey on the phone. "Yeah, we're good." The old man came through. I sat there in the darkness of my study, listening to them celebrate upstairs. They were sleeping in my house, eating my food, spending money they hadn't earned, and now they wanted more. Not asking, demanding. Not my daughter and son-in-law anymore. Strangers wearing familiar faces. Something shifted in me that night, something cold and final. I'd spent 38 years building something real, building a legacy for my daughter, and she'd just sold it for comfort and designer bags and expensive dinners. They thought I was a resource to be exploited, an ATM with a pulse. They were about to learn differently. I didn't sleep that night, couldn't. I sat in my workshop, the one Jessica and Jeffrey liked to mock, surrounded by leather and tools. My hands moved automatically, working on a saddle I'd been crafting for weeks. The familiar motions helped me think. The smell of leather and oil filled the space. My grandfather taught me this craft when I was 8 years old. "A man needs to create something," he'd told me, his weathered hands guiding mine. "Something that lasts after he's gone." I'd made my first belt at 9. Still had it somewhere, crude and uneven, but mine. I thought about Jessica at that age, 9 years old, gap-toothed, bringing me lunch in the south pasture. She'd ride her pony alongside my horse, chattering about school, about her friends, about the stray cat she wanted to keep. "Please, Daddy, I'll take care of it, I promise." I'd said yes, of course. Always said yes to her. The cat lived 16 years. Jessica cried for 3 days when it died. She was 23 then, home from college. I held her while she sobbed into my shoulder, just like when she was small. "Everything dies, baby girl," I'd said, "but we remember the good parts." She'd nodded against my chest. "You taught me that, Dad. You taught me everything important." When had that changed? I kept working the leather, searching my memory for the exact moment. Jessica at 25, graduating college. Still warm, still mine. Jessica at 27, starting her first job. Beginning to drift, but still calling every Sunday. Jessica at 28, meeting Jeffrey. The calls became shorter, less frequent. Jessica at 29, engaged. I remember the lunch where she told me. We sat at a diner in Fredericksburg, the same one where we'd eaten pancakes every Saturday when she was little. She showed me the ring, 3 carats, platinum setting. "It's beautiful," I'd said. And then, because I couldn't help myself, "Do you love him?" She'd pulled her hand back, defensive. What kind of question is that? The only one that matters. "Of course I love him, Dad. He's successful, ambitious. He's going places." She'd said it like she was trying to convince herself, or maybe convince me. He's nothing like... She stopped. Nothing like what? Nothing like the guys around here, cowboys and ranchers and... She waved her hand vaguely. People who never leave Texas. Your grandfather never left Texas, I said quietly. I've never left Texas. We built good lives here. I want more than good, Dad. I want great. She'd looked at me with something like pity. You wouldn't understand. That conversation played in my mind as I worked the leather. Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't understand wanting more than what you had, more than what you'd earned. I'd always thought building something was enough, creating value, providing for family, leaving the land better than you found it. But Jeffrey didn't build anything. He moved money around, took percentages, played with other people's assets, and now he'd gambled away $500,000 and expected me to cover his mistake. Not asked, expected, like it was owed to him. I remembered the first time Jeffrey called me old cowboy. 6 months after the wedding. We were at a barbecue and one of his investment banker friends asked what I did. Morris runs a cattle ranch, Jeffrey said with that particular smile. 3,000 acres of cows and dirt. Very rustic. His friend laughed. Jeffrey laughed. I didn't. 3,200 acres, I'd corrected, and we're one of the most profitable operations in the hill country. Jeffrey had waved his hand dismissively. Sure, it's quaint. Great for family photos. Quaint? My life's work was quaint. The ranch that fed his family, housed them, supported the lifestyle Jessica had grown accustomed to. Quaint. Last year, my birthday. The one Jessica forgot this year. The previous year, she'd at least come to dinner, though she arrived 2 hours late. Jeffrey didn't come at all. Conference call with Hong Kong, she'd explained, not meeting my eyes. We ate in silence, Jessica checking her phone every few minutes. When dessert came, she stood up. I should get back. Jeffrey doesn't like eating alone. You're already here, I'd said. Stay for cake, please. She'd hesitated, actually considered it for a moment. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and something in her face closed off. Sorry, Dad. Next time. There hadn't been a next time. The memories kept coming as dawn approached. Jessica at 12, crying because boys at school teased her about her mother leaving. Me, holding her, promising that I'd never leave, that I'd always be there for her. That promise had held for 35 years, and in return she'd stood silently while her husband screamed at me, demanded my money, treated me like an obstacle instead of a father. The sky started to lighten outside my workshop window. I set down my tools and looked at what I'd created. A saddle, nearly finished. Beautiful work, even if I said so myself. Detailed tooling, perfect stitching, something that would last decades if cared for properly. Something real. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd saved months ago, after a conversation with another rancher about estate planning. A lawyer in Austin, Larry Henderson. He answered on the third ring, sounding alert despite the early hour. Mr. Henderson, I said, this is Morris Stanley. We met at the Cattlemen's Association dinner last fall. I need your help with something urgent. By 9 that morning, I was in his office in Austin. Henderson was 50-ish, sharp-eyed, wearing a suit that looked expensive but not flashy. Professional. He listened to my situation without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. That's quite a request, Mr. Stanley, he said when I finished. Selling a 3,200-acre ranch in 48 hours isn't impossible, but it's highly unusual. And revoking your will, you're sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. May I ask why such urgency? I smiled, and this time it was genuine. Because they think I'm a resource to be extracted, an old cowboy who doesn't understand the modern world. They're about to learn that I understand it perfectly. I just choose to live differently. Henderson studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll make some calls. I have a client who's been looking for a profitable ranch in the hill country. California investor, cash buyer. If he's still interested, we could move quickly. How quickly? If he bites, 48 hours for the paperwork. I'll need a property assessment, which I can rush. You'll take a slight hit on price for the speed. I don't care about the price. I care about the timeline. Then let's get started. The next 24 hours were a blur. Property assessors, appraisers, lawyers, title companies. I barely slept. Henderson's buyer, a man named Robert Clark, flew in from San Francisco that afternoon. We walked the ranch together. He asked good questions, knew cattle, understood land management. Not a speculator, an actual rancher looking to expand. "This is beautiful property, Mr. Stanley," he said, standing on a ridge overlooking the valley. "Why are you selling?" I thought about lying, then decided against it. My family thinks it's already theirs. I'm showing them it's not. Clark laughed. "I've got 2 ex-wives who thought the same thing. I understand completely." We shook hands on $2,847,000 that evening. Below market value, but cash, immediate, final. Henderson drew up the paperwork. I packed my essentials that night while Jeffrey and Jessica slept upstairs. Oblivious. Photo albums, my leather tools, important documents, my grandfather's pocket watch. At 3 in the morning, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a letter. Made it clear. Simple. No room for misunderstanding. I attached the receipt showing I'd paid Jeffrey's casino debt directly. The rest was mine. The house, the ranch, all of it sold. They had 30 days to vacate. I left the letter on the kitchen counter, took one last look around the house I'd built, and walked out the door. Didn't look back. Couldn't afford to. They wanted my money. They'd gotten exactly what they deserved. Nothing. The next morning, I signed the final documents in Henderson's office. The wire transfer cleared at 9:47 a.m. $2,847,000, minus Henderson's fee and closing costs. I walked out with $2,763,400 in a cashier's check and a feeling I hadn't experienced in 5 years. Freedom. I drove back to the ranch one last time, not to say goodbye, to collect the pieces of my life that mattered. The photo albums were first. Jessica as a baby, as a toddler, as a teenager. The girl I remembered, not the woman she'd become. My grandfather's leather tools, each one worn smooth by decades of use. The deed to my grandfather's burial plot. A wooden box containing my father's war medals. Things with meaning, things they'd never understand. I moved through the house methodically, room by room. In the guest room, where Jeffrey had spread out like a conquering army, I noticed details I'd previously ignored. His cologne collection on the dresser, 12 bottles ranging from $200 to $800 each. More than I spent on groceries in a month. His closet held 23 suits. I counted them. 23. Each one custom-tailored, each one probably worth $3,000 or more. In Jessica's vanity, I found 17 lipsticks, all the same shade of red. Apparently one wasn't enough when they cost $65 each. Her jewelry box held pieces I'd never seen her wear. A tennis bracelet, diamond earrings, a watch with a price tag still attached, $8,400. The tag was 3 months old, $8,000 for a watch, but she couldn't call on my birthday. I felt something then, not anger exactly, more like clarity, like watching a magic trick after someone explains how it works. All those years I'd thought they were struggling, saving up to buy their own place, but Jeffrey had been driving a BMW 750i, $70,000 minimum. Jessica wore shoes that cost more than most people's weekly paychecks. They weren't saving, they were spending. My money, as it turned out, since they lived rent-free and ate my food. The kitchen told its own story. The refrigerator held organic vegetables from Whole Foods, grass-fed steaks, imported cheese. The wine rack contained bottles I recognized from restaurant menus, the kind with 3-digit prices. Meanwhile, my own coffee was store brand. My breakfast eggs came from my own chickens, and my boots were 8 years old because good boots, properly maintained, last. I pulled out my phone and took pictures. Every room, every detail. The expensive waste, the casual extravagance, the evidence of lives lived on someone else's dime. Not for court, for myself. So I'd remember why I did what I was about to do. At 2 in the afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with pen and paper. The letter needed to be clear, factual and final. No emotion, no room for negotiation. "Jeffrey," I wrote, "you asked for money. I gave you exactly what you needed. I sold the ranch this morning for $2,847,000. Your $500,000 casino debt has been paid directly to the Venetian. Attached is the receipt. The remaining $2,347,000, minus expenses, belongs to me. The house was included in the sale. Mr. Robert Clark, the new owner, will take possession in 30 days as per the purchase agreement. You have until April 5th to vacate. Do not attempt to contact me. MS. I attached the casino receipt showing the wire transfer. $500,000 to the Venetian account holder, Jeffrey Thompson, paid in full at 10:23 a.m. He couldn't say I hadn't kept my word. I left the letter on the kitchen counter, weighted down with Jessica's $8,400 watch, a small touch of poetry. By 4 o'clock, my truck was loaded. By 5, I was on the highway heading north. By midnight, I crossed into Oklahoma. By dawn the next day, I was in Montana, watching the sun rise over mountains that had nothing to do with my past. I'd researched Kalispell carefully. Population 847. One main street, 2 churches, a post office, a general store, and a diner called Maggie's. No Whole Foods, no BMW dealerships. No reason for Jessica or Jeffrey to ever think of looking there. Perfect. The rental house was small, maybe 900 square feet, but it had a workshop in the back and a view of the mountains that made my chest ache in a good way. The landlord, a weathered man named Tom Harris, showed me around without asking questions. First month, last month, and security deposit, he said, comes to $2,100 total. Rent's $700 a month. That work for you? It works fine. You running from something? I met his eyes. Running toward something, actually. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. Welcome to Kalispell. That night, I slept for 12 hours straight. No sounds from upstairs. No Jeffrey's snoring through thin walls. No Jessica's phone alarm going off at 6 a.m. Just silence, broken occasionally by wind through pine trees. I woke up feeling rested for the first time in years. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Another. By noon, I had 17 missed calls and 12 voicemails. I listened to the first one. Dad, it's Jessica. There's been some kind of mistake. There are people here saying they own the house. Please call me back. Please. I don't understand what's happening. Her voice was high, panicky, the voice of someone whose world just shifted under her feet. I deleted it. Listened to the second one. Mr. Stanley, this is Robert Clark. We met yesterday. Just wanted to confirm I've taken possession of the property. Found your letter for the current occupants. They seem surprised. Anyway, title's clear. Keys are mine. Thanks again for the smooth transaction. The third voicemail was Jeffrey. You senile old fool. You can't just sell the house. We live here. This is illegal. I'm calling my lawyer. You're going to regret this. I actually laughed at that one. My lawyer versus his lawyer. Henderson's firm had 90 attorneys and specialized in property law. Jeffrey's lawyer was probably someone from his firm who handled their compliance issues. This would be entertaining. I changed my phone number that afternoon. The old one went straight to a disconnected message. I gave the new number to exactly 3 people. Henderson, the property management company handling my stored belongings, and Tom Harris, my new landlord. For 3 days, I did nothing but settle in. Organized my workshop, unpacked my tools, started working on a new saddle, this one for myself. The leather felt good in my hands. Honest work, real work. On the 4th day, I called Henderson. How are they taking it? I asked. About as well as you'd expect. They hired an attorney, Fletcher Hughes from some mid-sized firm in Austin. He's making noise about duress, mental incapacity, undue influence, and he's wasting everyone's time. The medical evaluation you did shows clear cognitive function. The video recording of you signing the documents shows you were alert, understanding, and acting of your own free will. The appraisal shows the sale price was within reasonable market range. They have no case. How long until they figure that out? Hughes is competent enough to know it already, but clients don't always listen to their lawyers. I'd say 2 weeks before they accept reality. Maybe 3. Good. Mr. Stanley, if I may ask, what's your endgame here? I thought about that. I spent 38 years building something for my daughter. She chose to see me as a resource instead of a father. I'm simply correcting that misunderstanding. Harsh, but fair. Anything else you need from me? Actually, yes. I need a recommendation for a private investigator. Someone discreet, thorough, and expensive. Henderson was quiet for a moment. What are we investigating? Jeffrey Thompson's business practices. I have a feeling they're as sound as his gambling judgment. I'll send you a name. 2 days later, I was on a video call with Thomas Bishop, a former Houston police detective who'd gone private. Bishop was 50-something with the kind of face that had seen everything and been impressed by none of it. I charge $275 an hour plus expenses, he said without preamble. I don't do divorces and I don't break the law. Everything I find is obtained legally and can be used in court if needed. Still interested? Very. How much do you know about financial services compliance and insider trading? Bishop's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Interest, maybe. Enough. You think your son-in-law is dirty? I think a man who gambles away $500,000 and expects someone else to cover it probably cuts other corners too. I want to know what corners. Time frame? Take as long as you need. Be thorough. This isn't about divorce or asset protection, is it? No. This is about justice. Bishop smiled for the first time. Those are my favorite cases. I'll send you a contract. I hung up and looked out at the mountains. Somewhere in Texas, Jeffrey and Jessica were scrambling, panicking, hiring lawyers they couldn't afford to fight a battle they couldn't win, and they still had no idea what was coming next. They thought losing the house was the punishment. They were wrong. That was just the opening move. Spring in Montana was different from spring in Texas. Colder, slower, with snow still clinging to the higher elevations even as the valleys turned green. I liked it. The weather matched my mood, patient, deliberate, waiting for the right moment. I established a routine quickly. Up at 6, coffee on the porch watching the sunrise. 2 hours in the workshop before lunch. Afternoons either hiking the trails around Kalispell or driving into Kalispell proper, the larger town 20 miles south, for supplies. Evenings reading or working leather until I was tired enough to sleep. The locals left me alone mostly. Small-town courtesy. They'd nod when we passed, hold the door at the post office, make small talk about weather. Nobody asked where I came from or why. In Kalispell, that counted as good manners. On my 10th day there, Tom Harris stopped by with a 6-pack of local beer. Thought you might want company, he said, or not. Either way, I brought beer. We sat on the porch, drinking in comfortable silence. After the 3rd beer, he said, You don't have the look of a man running from the law. No? Woman trouble? Family trouble? Ah, that's worse. He took another pull from his bottle. My son hasn't spoken to me in 6 years. Money dispute. He thought he deserved half my business, even though he never worked a day in it. I said no. He said I was selfish. Haven't heard from him since. Do you regret it? Every day. But I'd make the same choice again. Teaching him he could take without earning would have been worse. Tom stood up, left the remaining beers. Anyway, welcome to Montana. We're good at respecting boundaries here. After he left, I sat there thinking about regret. Did I regret what I'd done? No. Did I regret that it had become necessary? Every moment. Henderson called 2 weeks after the sale. They've dropped their legal challenge, he said. Finally accepted that the sale is ironclad. They're moving out of the house this weekend. Where are they going? Apartment in Austin. $1,850 a month, according to the address Hughes mentioned. 2 bedrooms, 900 square feet. Quite a downgrade from a 3,200-acre ranch. I thought about that apartment. Thin walls, probably. Upstairs neighbors. Parking lot instead of pastures. Good. There's something else. Jeffrey took out a personal loan, $75,000 at 18% interest. I only know because Hughes mentioned it in passing, complaining about their financial situation. Why would he need a loan? I paid his casino debt. Legal fees, moving costs, deposits, and without your free housing, they're paying for everything themselves now. His salary's good, but not good enough to maintain their lifestyle and fight a legal battle. Their lifestyle? You mean the one they lived on my dime? Exactly. After hanging up, I did some math. Jeffrey probably made $180,000 a year. Decent money. But take out taxes, and he netted maybe $115,000. The apartment was $22,200 annually. Add utilities, insurance, food, car payments, gas, and the minimum on that new loan. They were probably spending $90,000 on basics. That left $25,000 for everything else. For people who'd been spending like they made $500,000, that was going to hurt. Bishop called 3 days later. I've got preliminary findings. Want me to send a written report or talk it through? Talk. Your son-in-law is a piece of work. He's been giving investment advice to clients that violates SEC regulations. Nothing massive, but consistent. Uses information from his firm's research department before it's public. Steers clients toward positions that benefit him personally. That kind of thing. Classic low-level insider trading. How low-level? He's probably made an extra $200,000 over the past 3 years. Not enough to trigger automated flags, but enough to be illegal. I've got email chains, trade records, timestamps that show he acted on non-public information. Is it prosecutable? Criminally? Maybe, if the SEC wants to make an example. Civilly? Definitely. His firm would fire him immediately if they knew. The liability alone would terrify them. What do you need from me? Nothing. I'll compile everything into a formal report with exhibits. You can do whatever you want with it. Send it to the SEC. Send it to his employer, frame it, and hang it on your wall. Your call. Send me everything. Complete documentation. Will do. Mr. Stanley, whatever he did to you, he earned what's coming. I spent the evening thinking about what to do with Bishop's findings. The easy move was sending it straight to Jeffrey's firm. He'd be fired within days, probably blackballed from the industry. Career over at 38. But easy wasn't what I wanted. I wanted them to understand cause and effect, action and consequence. You don't get to scream at an old man, demand his money, treat him like furniture, and walk away clean. I called Henderson the next morning. I need you to handle something for me, anonymously. I'm listening. I'm going to send you a package, documentation of securities violations. I want it delivered to the SEC and to Jeffrey Thompson's employer, simultaneously. No indication where it came from. That's doable, but the SEC will investigate the source. Let them. Everything in the package is legally obtained. Bishop's a former cop. He knows how to document evidence. When do you want this delivered? I thought about timing. They'd just moved into their apartment, probably still unpacking boxes, trying to adjust to their new budget. Hitting them now would be kicking them while they were down. Perfect. Next week, Monday morning, 9 a.m. deliveries. Consider it done. The weekend before the delivery, I worked on a new belt. Detailed tooling, my grandfather's old patterns, the kind of work that requires complete focus, leaving no room for doubt or second thoughts. By Sunday evening, I had something beautiful, something permanent, something that would outlast me. Monday morning in Montana, I was drinking coffee when my phone rang. Henderson. Package delivered, he said. Both locations confirmed receipt. And now we wait. SEC moves slowly, but his employer won't. I'd give it 48 hours before he's called into a meeting. Keep me updated. I went to my workshop and started another project. A saddle this time, complex work that would take weeks. I needed something to occupy my hands while the machinery of justice ground forward in Texas. On Wednesday, Henderson called again. Jeffrey's been suspended from work, no pay, pending internal investigation. How do you know? I have a friend who works in HR at his firm, called in a favor. I sat with that information. Jeffrey's salary, gone. His reputation destroyed. His debts, still mounting. And he still had no idea who'd turned his world upside down. That evening, I got a call from a Montana number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered, Mr. Stanley, this is Marcus Webb from First Montana Bank. I'm calling about your application for a business license and commercial lease. I'd almost forgotten. 2 days ago, I'd visited a small, empty storefront in Kalispell, 20 by 30 feet, good foot traffic, reasonable rent, perfect for a leather goods shop. Yes? Everything's approved. You can sign the lease tomorrow if you'd like. Congratulations on your new business. After hanging up, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. In Texas, my old life was crumbling. Jeffrey suspended, Jessica probably working for the first time in years to cover their bills, both of them scrambling and panicking and still not understanding why. In Montana, I had a new house, a new business starting, and a peace I hadn't felt in decades. They thought they were taking from a weak old man who'd just roll over and accept their disrespect. They'd learned differently. But this wasn't about revenge exactly. It was about teaching a lesson they should have learned years ago. You don't get to take without giving. You don't get to demand without earning. And you definitely don't get to treat your father like an ATM and expect him to just accept it. I'd given them everything. My house, my money, my respect, my love. They'd taken it all and asked for more. Now they were learning what nothing felt like. And I was just getting started. Bishop's full report arrived 3 weeks after Jeffrey's suspension. 247 pages of documentation, exhibits, email chains, transaction records, and legal analysis. I sat in my Montana workshop, reading it cover to cover twice. The man was thorough, almost frighteningly so. Jeffrey Thompson hadn't just bent the rules. He'd treated them like suggestions. 17 separate instances of trades executed with non-public information. Client accounts steered toward positions that generated kickbacks. Coordination with other brokers to manipulate prices on low-volume stocks. The documentation was airtight. Timestamps matched. Email headers verified. Financial trails clear as mountain water. How much did he make from all this? I asked Bishop during our follow-up call. Conservative estimate, $230,000 over 3 years. But that's just what I could prove. Probably closer to $300,000 total. $300,000, while living rent-free in my house, eating my food, treating me like furniture. I thought about all the times Jeffrey had complained about his job, about how hard he worked, about the stress of managing other people's money. Turned out he was managing it straight into his own pockets. What happens now? I asked. Your lawyer sent the package to both the SEC and his firm, right? Correct. The firm suspended him immediately, which means their legal team found enough to worry about. The SEC will open a formal investigation. That takes months. But once they do, Jeffrey's career in finance is over. Even if criminal charges don't stick, the regulatory violations will get him banned from the industry. And if they do stick, 3 to 5 years most likely. White-collar sentencing guidelines, plus restitution, fines, supervised release. Bishop paused. Mr. Stanley, I've done a lot of these cases. The evidence is solid. He's going down. After we hung up, I sat there feeling something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction exactly. More like completion. Like finishing a piece of leatherwork and seeing all the edges aligned perfectly. The stitching straight. The pattern symmetrical. Henderson called that afternoon with an update. Jeffrey's firm terminated him this morning. Official reasons cited as violations of company policy and regulatory compliance. They're cooperating fully with the SEC investigation. How do you know all this? It's in the public record now. They filed the required notifications with FINRA. Anyone can look it up. What about Jessica? According to my contact, she's been trying to find work. Applied to several places in Austin. Retail mostly. No degree, no recent work history, not a lot of options. I thought about that. Jessica, who dreamed of becoming a teacher, who'd been bright and capable before Jeffrey, now applying to work retail counters. Part of me felt something sharp and painful. The other part remembered her standing silently while Jeffrey screamed at me, demanded my money, called me a resource instead of a father. Keep monitoring, I said. I want to know what they do next. The following week, I opened my leather shop in Kalispell. Called it Stanley Craftworks. Simple sign, clean windows, my best pieces displayed in the front. Word spread quickly in a small community. By the second week, I had my first commission. A saddle for a local rancher who'd heard about my work. Tom Harris, my landlord, stopped by on opening day. Nice setup. Your work's good. Learned from my grandfather? That the one who never left Texas? I smiled. Remembered that conversation on my porch. That's him. Well, Montana's lucky to have you. Life developed a rhythm. Mornings in the shop, afternoons working leather, evenings on the porch watching the mountains. Simple, honest, the opposite of everything I'd left behind in Texas. Then on a Thursday morning in mid-April, Henderson called with news that made me sit down. Jeffrey's been officially charged by the SEC. Civil penalties, not criminal yet, but that might come. They're seeking disgorgement of ill-gotten gains, civil fines, and a permanent bar from working in securities. How much in fines? They're asking for $450,000 total. He'll never pay it. He doesn't have it. $450,000. Almost exactly what I'd paid to cover his casino debt. The symmetry was almost poetic. There's more, Henderson continued. They're trying to challenge the ranch sale again. Different lawyer this time. Robert Hughes from a firm in Dallas. More expensive, more aggressive. On what grounds? They're claiming you sold the ranch specifically to avoid helping your son-in-law in his time of need, arguing it was a retaliatory action designed to cause financial harm. I laughed. Actually laughed. I sold my property to avoid being extorted. That's not retaliation, that's self-preservation. I agree, and so will the court. But Hughes is good. He's going to make noise, drag this out, cost you money. Let him. I've got time and resources. Do they? No. They're drowning. The $75,000 loan Jeffrey took out? He defaulted on the first payment. The loan company's threatening collections. I did the math. Without Jeffrey's income, they had nothing coming in except whatever Jessica made working retail. Probably $15 an hour, maybe 30 hours a week. Call it $1,800 a month after taxes. Rent alone was $1,850. They weren't making it. They were sinking. What do you recommend? I asked Henderson. Let them thrash. Hughes will file motions, will respond, the court will dismiss. But it'll take 2 or 3 months. That's 2 or 3 more months of them bleeding money on legal fees they can't afford. Do it. That evening I received an email from Bishop. Subject line, additional findings. I opened it. Mr. Stanley. During my investigation, I found something else. Your daughter Jessica opened 3 credit cards in your name over the past 2 years. Total debt, $47,300. Thought you should know. I have attached documentation. TB. I sat there staring at the screen. 3 credit cards, in my name, without my knowledge or consent. That wasn't just betrayal. That was fraud. Identity theft. Criminal. I opened the attachments. Capital One, Chase, American Express. Applications with my information, my social security number, but signatures that didn't quite match mine. Statements showing charges. Designer clothes, restaurant bills, spa treatments, jewelry. The pattern was clear. Jessica had been funding her lifestyle on my credit for years. My hands weren't shaking. My breathing stayed steady, but something cold settled in my chest. Some final piece of whatever attachment I'd been holding on to. I picked up the phone and called Henderson. I need you to contact the fraud departments at 3 banks, I said, and then I need you to help me file a police report. For what? Identity theft. I have documentation. My daughter opened credit cards in my name without permission. Henderson was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Stanley, that's a criminal charge against your daughter. I know what it is? Are you sure? I thought about Jessica at 9, bringing me lunch in the pasture. Thought about her at 16, helping with fence posts. Thought about her at 35, standing silently while Jeffrey screamed at me. Thought about the credit card statements, the forged signatures, the systematic theft. She made her choices, I said. Now she deals with the consequences. File the reports. I'll start the process tomorrow. After hanging up, I sat on my porch watching the sun set over the mountains. Somewhere in Texas, Jessica and Jeffrey were probably having another fight about money, about the investigation, about whose fault this all was. They still thought the ranch sale was the punishment. They had no idea what was coming next. The next few weeks passed like a slow-motion avalanche. Each day brought new developments, each one pulling Jeffrey and Jessica deeper into the consequences of their own choices. Henderson filed the fraud reports with all 3 banks on a Monday morning. By Wednesday, the banks had frozen the accounts and initiated their own investigations. By Friday, I received confirmation that all 3 cases would be forwarded to law enforcement. The evidence is pretty clear, Henderson said during our weekly call. Forged signatures, unauthorized use of your information, charges made while you were in Montana with documented alibis. They can't claim you approved any of it. How long until charges? Hard to say. Could be weeks, could be months. Law enforcement doesn't move fast on white-collar crime unless there's significant amounts involved. But $47,300 is enough to be serious. This isn't shoplifting. That same week, the court dismissed Jeffrey and Jessica's second attempt to overturn the ranch sale. The judge's ruling was only 3 pages, but the key sentence made me smile. The plaintiff has failed to demonstrate any legal grounds for questioning a legitimate business transaction between consenting adults. This matter is closed. Hughes had charged them $18,000 for that failure, money they didn't have, for a case they couldn't win, fighting a battle they'd already lost. I kept working. A saddle for a rancher in Whitefish, a set of belts for a tourist from Seattle who'd wandered into my shop, custom leather work for a local craftsman who needed saddlebags for his motorcycle. Small jobs, honest work, money I earned with my hands instead of by manipulating others. Then, on a Tuesday morning in early May, Henderson called, with the news I'd been waiting for. The SEC filed their formal complaint this morning. It's public record now. 17 counts of securities fraud, 9 counts of insider trading, multiple violations of investment advisor regulations. When's the hearing? Preliminary hearing is in 3 weeks, but Jeffrey's lawyer is going to try to settle. The evidence is overwhelming. Fighting it would only make things worse. What kind of settlement? Best case for him? He admits guilt, agrees to the permanent bar from securities work, pays whatever he can of the fines. They'll put him on a payment plan for the rest. Worst case, criminal referral on top of the civil penalties. I thanked Henderson and hung up. Sat there in my shop, hands resting on the saddle I was tooling. The leather was smooth, familiar, real, unlike everything Jeffrey had built his life on. 3 days later, Jessica called. I'd changed my number, but she'd somehow tracked down the shop. The phone rang, and I saw Stanley Craftworks on the caller ID from my cell phone listing. Stanley Craftworks, I answered, keeping my voice neutral. Dad? Her voice was small, broken, nothing like the confident woman who'd stood silently while Jeffrey demanded my money. Dad, please don't hang up. I said nothing. I know you're angry. I know we hurt you. But I need to talk to you. Please. Just 5 minutes. Why? Because... She started crying. Real sobs, not manipulation. Because everything's falling apart. Jeffrey's going to lose his case. We can't pay rent. I'm working at a boutique making $15 an hour, and it's not enough. We're going to lose everything. You already did, I said quietly. You lost it when you decided I was worth more as an ATM than as a father. I made a mistake. No, a mistake is forgetting to call on my birthday once. You forgot for 2 years. A mistake is being late to dinner. You chose expensive restaurants over family meals. A mistake is 1 forged credit card. You opened 3. Silence on the other end. Then, you know about those. I know about everything, Jessica. The credit cards, Jeffrey's insider trading, the loan he defaulted on, all of it. I know because I made it my business to know. What do you mean you made it your business? Her voice changed, fear creeping in. Dad, what did you do? I protected myself. I removed myself from a toxic situation, and I made sure that people who break the law face consequences. The SEC investigation, that was you? No, that was Jeffrey. He committed the crimes. I just made sure the right people knew about them. You destroyed us, her voice cracked, climbing toward hysteria. You took everything. The house, the money, Jeffrey's career. You ruined our lives. I sold my property and reported financial crimes. Neither of those things is illegal, unlike what Jeffrey did, unlike what you did with those credit cards. The silence that followed was long enough that I thought she'd hung up. Then quietly, what credit cards? Capital One, Chase, and American Express, opened in my name. $47,300 in charges. I filed fraud reports with all 3 banks and with law enforcement. No, whispered, terrified. No, you wouldn't. I already did. But I'm your daughter. You were my daughter. You became someone else. Someone who steals, who lies, who stands by while her husband screams at her father and demands money he didn't earn. Please, begging now, please don't do this. I'll pay it back. I'll get another job. I'll do anything. You should have thought about consequences before you forged my signature. I was desperate. For designer handbags, for spa treatments, for jewelry you never wore. Jessica, I've seen the statements. You weren't desperate. You were greedy. She was crying hard now, gasping sobs. The kind of crying I remembered from when she was small and hurt herself. But I wasn't going to fix this. Couldn't fix it, even if I wanted to. This was broken in ways that couldn't be mended. I'm sorry, she said between sobs. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, too. Sorry that you turned into someone I don't recognize. Sorry that you chose comfort over family. Sorry that I failed you somehow as a father. You didn't fail me. Yes, I did. I taught you that people would always bail you out, that there were no real consequences, that love meant accepting disrespect. I was wrong about all of that, and by the time I realized it, you were already gone. I'm right here. No, you're not. The girl I raised wouldn't have done any of this. That girl disappeared 5 years ago when she married Jeffrey. I don't know who you are now, but you're not my daughter. I hung up, turned off my phone, sat there in my shop, surrounded by leather and tools and honest work. My hands were steady, my breathing was calm, and I felt nothing except a deep, cold certainty that I'd done what needed to be done. 2 weeks later, Henderson called with an update. The credit card fraud case is moving forward. Detective in Austin wants to interview you, probably next month. Fine. There's something else. Jeffrey and Jessica's apartment complex filed for eviction. They're 3 months behind on rent. Where will they go? Not your problem, Mr. Stanley. He was right. It wasn't my problem. Not anymore. That evening I worked on a new saddle. The leather was dark, rich, perfect. My hands moved with practiced precision, each stitch exact, each cut clean. Outside, the Montana sky turned purple and gold, mountains stark against the sunset. Somewhere in Texas, 2 people I used to know were losing everything they'd taken for granted, their home, their money, their future, and I felt nothing but peace. The lesson was simple. If you treat someone like an asset instead of a person, don't be surprised when they liquidate their position. The week after my conversation with Jessica, Henderson sent me a package. Inside was a copy of my new will, dated the day before I sold the ranch. I'd had him draw it up as insurance, but looking at it now, it felt more like a statement of fact. This document hereby revokes all previous wills and testamentary dispositions. I direct that my entire estate, including all assets, properties, and funds, be transferred to the Hill Country Veterans Ranch Foundation, a 501c3 organization supporting retired ranchers and agricultural workers. No mention of Jessica, no mention of Jeffrey. Just a clean break, legally documented and notarized. Send them a copy, I told Henderson during our call. Are you sure? That's going to hurt. They hurt me for 5 years. 1 letter won't kill them. When do you want it delivered? I thought about timing. The SEC case was scheduled for a hearing in 2 weeks. Jeffrey would be drowning in legal stress, probably hoping for some miracle, some last-minute salvation. Perfect moment to remind him that miracles don't exist for people who take without earning. Send it the same day as Jeffrey's SEC hearing. Let it arrive in their mailbox that afternoon. Henderson was quiet for a moment. You know, Mr. Stanley, I've been practicing law for 26 years. I've seen a lot of family disputes, but I've never seen anyone execute a plan quite this thoroughly. Should I take that as a compliment? Take it as an observation. Most people get emotional, make mistakes, leave openings. You've been surgical. I learned something in 38 years of ranching. You don't let sick cattle infect the herd. You separate them, treat what you can, and accept losses when necessary. Same principle applies to family, apparently. The SEC hearing happened on a Thursday. Henderson had a contact who attended, called me afterward with details. Jeffrey tried to negotiate a settlement, offered to pay $50,000 and accept a 3-year suspension instead of permanent ban. And the SEC lawyer laughed at him, literally laughed. Said the evidence was too clear, the violations too numerous, and the amount he stole too significant. They countered with $180,000 in fines, permanent ban, and possible criminal referral. What did Jeffrey do? According to my contact, he went pale. Started arguing that he couldn't possibly pay that much. His lawyer pulled him aside. They had a heated discussion, then asked for a continuance. Judge gave them 2 weeks to respond. That same afternoon, the mail carrier delivered my letter. I knew the exact moment Jessica opened it, because my phone rang 15 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. Dad, what is this? Her voice was barely controlled panic. This will... You left everything to some charity? Everything? What about me? What about... How could you do this? The second voicemail came an hour later. Jeffrey this time, his voice tight with rage. You vindictive old man. We know what you did. The SEC investigation, the fraud reports, all of it. You orchestrated this whole thing. You're not just taking revenge. You're trying to destroy us. Well, congratulations. You win. Hope you're happy in whatever hole you crawled into. I saved both voicemails, not for legal reasons, just as reminders of how far they'd fallen. But Henderson called that evening with unexpected news. They've hired a new lawyer, somebody aggressive, Mitchell Grant from a firm in Dallas. He specializes in elder abuse cases. Elder abuse? I'm 64 and perfectly healthy. That's his angle. He's going to argue that you were coerced by Jeffrey's desperate situation, that the sale of the ranch was done under duress, and that your subsequent actions show signs of mental instability or undue influence from unnamed parties. That's ridiculous. We already won this case. We won the challenge to the sale. This is different. Grant's filing a civil suit claiming financial elder abuse, seeking damages and asking the court to review your mental capacity. He's requesting a forensic psychiatric evaluation. I sat down, processing this. Can he do that? He can file it. Whether it goes anywhere is another question, but Mr. Stanley, he's going to make this ugly. He'll subpoena your medical records, interview people in Montana, try to paint you as a confused old man being manipulated by lawyers and investigators. I'm not confused. I'm not being manipulated. I executed a legal property sale and reported legitimate crimes. I know that, but Grant's good at creating doubt, and juries can be unpredictable when you put a crying daughter on the stand talking about her father who abandoned her. Something cold settled in my stomach, not fear. Calculation. They were adapting, changing tactics. I'd need to adapt too. What's our defense? Documentation. We show the pattern of their behavior, the financial abuse you endured, the evidence of their crimes. We put you on the stand and let the jury see that you're sharp, clear-minded, and acted rationally. When's the hearing? 3 weeks, and there's something else. Grant also filed a petition for rent reimbursement. He's claiming that the rental agreement you had them sign was fraudulent, that you knew it was a family arrangement, and you're using it to extort money from them. It was a signed, notarized contract, which they're claiming they signed under duress, believing it was just a formality. Grant's arguing that you never intended to enforce it until you decided to take revenge. I thought about the contract. I'd had them sign it 3 years ago, shortly after Jeffrey started making those old cowboy comments. At the time, I'd told myself it was just paperwork, just protection. But maybe some part of me had known even then that this day would come. So they're counterattacking, I said, aggressively. They're fighting on multiple fronts. The SEC case, the fraud charges, and now this civil suit. They're desperate, which makes them dangerous. After hanging up, I walked out onto my porch. The Montana evening was cool, stars beginning to emerge. Somewhere 1,300 miles away, Jessica and Jeffrey were plotting their counteroffensive, trying to paint me as the villain in their story. Let them try. I'd spent 5 years being treated like an ATM, being disrespected in my own home, watching my daughter transform into someone I didn't recognize. I documented everything, prepared for everything, acted within the law at every step. They could hire all the lawyers they wanted. The facts were the facts. The evidence was the evidence. And the truth was simple. They'd taken from someone who'd given them everything, and when he finally said no, they'd tried to take even more. 3 days later, Henderson called with more news. Grant filed a motion to freeze your assets pending the elder abuse investigation. He's arguing that you might dissipate your funds to avoid paying damages if they win. Can he do that? He can try. I filed an opposition brief. Hearing is next week. Next week? This is moving fast. Grant's good. He's creating pressure, hoping you'll cave and offer a settlement to make it all go away. I smiled despite myself. He doesn't know me very well, does he? Apparently not. Should I prepare a settlement offer? No. We go to court. I want them to see my face when we win. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Henderson advised me to attend in person. We need the judge to see you, to see that you're competent, clear-minded, in control. So I flew back to Texas for the first time since leaving in March. The Austin courthouse was downtown, modern glass and steel. I arrived early, wearing a clean shirt and my best boots, not trying to look wealthy, just honest, real. Jessica and Jeffrey were already there when I walked into the courtroom. They saw me immediately. Jessica's face crumpled. Jeffrey's went rigid, eyes locked on mine with undisguised hatred. I nodded to them once, then took my seat behind Henderson. The judge was a woman in her 50s, Judge Rachel Morrison. She reviewed the motions carefully before speaking. Mr. Grant, you're alleging that Mr. Stanley sold his property under duress and is now exhibiting signs of mental instability. What evidence do you have to support this? Grant stood confident. Your Honor, the pattern is clear. Mr. Stanley sold a valuable property within 48 hours of being asked for financial help by his son-in-law. He then disappeared to Montana, cut off all contact with his daughter, and has since taken a series of increasingly vindictive actions, including filing criminal fraud charges and changing his will to exclude his only child. This behavior is consistent with someone experiencing a mental health crisis or being unduly influenced by outside parties. Judge Morrison turned to Henderson. Mr. Henderson? Your Honor, Mr. Stanley sold his property because he chose to. He underwent a medical evaluation the day before the sale, confirming his mental capacity. He moved to Montana to escape a toxic living situation where his daughter and son-in-law had lived rent-free in his home for 5 years, while running up debts in his name. The fraud charges are legitimate. The will change is his right as the property owner. Nothing about his behavior suggests incapacity. It suggests someone finally standing up for himself. The judge looked at me directly. Mr. Stanley, would you mind answering a few questions? Not at all, Your Honor. How old are you? 64. And you owned a cattle ranch in Fredericksburg? For 38 years, yes. Why did you sell it? I met her eyes steadily. Because my son-in-law demanded $500,000 to cover his gambling debts, and I realized that my daughter and he saw me as a resource to be exploited, rather than a family member to be respected. I sold the property to protect my assets and remove myself from a situation where I was being financially and emotionally abused. And the fraud charges against your daughter? She opened 3 credit cards in my name without my permission and accumulated $47,300 in debt. That's identity theft, Your Honor. Just because she's my daughter doesn't make it legal. Judge Morrison made notes, then looked at Grant. Mr. Grant, I'm not seeing evidence of incapacity here. I'm seeing evidence of family dysfunction, certainly. But Mr. Stanley appears articulate, rational, and capable of managing his affairs. Your Honor, if we could have a psychiatric evaluation. Motion denied. Mr. Stanley's medical records from the time of the sale are sufficient. This case will proceed to trial on its merits, but I'm not freezing his assets or ordering evaluations. Is there anything else? Grant's jaw tightened. No, Your Honor. Then we're adjourned. Trial date is set for 6 weeks from today. As people filed out, Jessica moved toward me. Henderson stepped between us. Mrs. Thompson, I'd advise you not to approach my client. He's my father. He's the plaintiff in a fraud case against you. Any contact could be construed as witness intimidation. Jessica looked past Henderson at me. Her eyes were red, desperate. Dad, please. We can fix this. We can talk. I forgave mistakes, I said quietly, but you made choices. Now, live with them. I turned and walked out of the courthouse, Henderson beside me. Behind me, I heard Jessica crying, and I felt nothing at all. The trial started weeks later. The courthouse was packed. Local news had picked it up. Rancher sues daughter for unpaid rent. Grant's opening painted me as a confused old man manipulated by lawyers. Henderson's was simple. This is about a signed contract and 5 years of disrespect. The neighbors testified first. Mrs. Patterson said, Jeffrey never worked that ranch. I'd see Morris fixing fences in the heat while Jeffrey sat inside on his computer. Mr. Wilson added, Jeffrey showed his friends around like he owned the place, called Morris the old cowboy like it was a joke. Then I took the stand. Why did you have them sign a rental agreement? Henderson asked. Protection. Jeffrey kept saying the ranch would be his someday. I wanted documentation that they were guests, not owners. Grant's cross-examination was aggressive. You never asked for rent until you sold the ranch. They were family. Then they stopped being family and started being parasites. Sustained, Judge Morrison said. Stick to facts, Mr. Stanley. The fact is they lived free for 5 years, accumulated debts in my name, then demanded I give them $500,000. Jessica testified next, looking thin and exhausted. The designer clothes were gone. Grant made her seem sympathetic until Henderson's cross-examination. How much did you spend on handbags in 3 years? I don't remember exactly. $34,000 according to statements. Spa treatments? I don't know. $12,400. All while living rent-free. Did you open credit cards in your father's name without permission? She went pale. That's a separate case. Yes or no? Yes, whispered. Speak up for the jury. Yes, I did. After 4 days, the jury deliberated 6 hours. We find for the plaintiff. Morris Stanley is awarded $23,400, plus $4,200 in court costs. Jessica sobbed. Judge Morrison added, You took advantage of a good man for years. This judgment stands. Pay what you owe and learn something about gratitude. In the hallway, Jessica approached. Dad, please. I gave you 35 years of chances. You chose money over family. Now live with that choice. I made mistakes. No, mistakes are accidental. You made choices. Henderson drove me to the airport. Jeffrey's SEC case settled. $180,000 in fines. Permanent ban from securities work. Can he pay it? He'll be paying it off for decades. I flew back to Montana, back to my workshop and simple life, back to a place where I was respected, where my word meant something. The war was over. I'd won by refusing to fight a battle I should never have had to fight. Weeks after the trial, Henderson called. The bankruptcy trustee found those credit cards opened in your name. 3 cards, $47,300 in debt. The DA is filing criminal charges against Jessica. When? Arraignment in 2 weeks. She's looking at potential jail time. The arraignment happened quickly. Jessica pled not guilty, but her attorney contacted Henderson about a plea deal. They want to negotiate. She'll plead guilty to all charges if you'll support leniency. Why would I do that? I asked. Because she's still your daughter. No, she made her choices. She faces the consequences. Jessica accepted a plea deal without my support. Guilty on all counts. The sentence, $47,300 restitution, 200 hours community service, 3 years probation, payment due within 90 days, or she goes to jail. 3 days later, Jeffrey showed up at my house in Montana. He looked terrible. Thin, worn, in cheap clothes. The swagger was gone. He approached my porch slowly. Mr. Stanley, he said, voice hoarse, Jessica needs to pay $47,300 in 90 days, or she goes to prison. We don't have it. We're bankrupt. I'm working retail for $11 an hour. Please, she's your daughter. How can you let her go to prison? I let the silence stretch, then spoke quietly. My daughter died 5 years ago, the day she married you and chose your money over her family. The person facing prison is a stranger who stole from me, lied to me, and stood by while you screamed at me in my own home. She made mistakes. Stop calling them mistakes. Jessica made choices. 3 times she forged my signature. Those weren't errors. Those were calculated decisions. Please, I'm begging you, drop the charges. Why would I do that? Because you're a good man. I was a good man who let people take advantage of him for 5 years. I'm done being that person. Jessica committed crimes. She's facing consequences. That's called justice. This isn't justice. It's revenge. I stepped closer. He flinched back. Let me tell you what revenge would look like. Revenge would be me asking for maximum penalty. Revenge would be me making sure everyone knows what she did. Revenge would be me enjoying her suffering. I'm not doing any of that. I'm simply letting the law take its course. That's not revenge. That's accountability. Jeffrey's shoulders sagged. What happens to us? That's not my problem. You're adults. You made choices. You face consequences. You rebuild if you can. But you do it without me. He drove away. I went back to my workshop, hands steady as I picked up my tools. Days later, Henderson called. Jessica's mother is loaning her the money for restitution. Payment will be at the final hearing in late September. Her mother, the one who left when Jessica was 12. Same one. Apparently they reconnected. The mother felt guilty. I thought about the irony. The mother who abandoned her now bailing her out of consequences. Then it's over, I said. I sat on my porch that evening, watching the Montana sunset. Somewhere far away, Jessica and Jeffrey were scrambling to pay back stolen money, facing consequences they'd earned, and I was here. Free, at peace, living on my own terms. The old cowboy had taught them all a lesson. The quietest person in the room is sometimes the most dangerous. Because they're not weak. They're just waiting for the right moment to show everyone exactly how strong they really are. The final hearing came in late September. I flew to Austin one last time, knowing this was the end. Henderson met me outside the courtroom. Jessica has the cashier's check. This should be quick. Judge Morrison presided. She reviewed the paperwork, then addressed Jessica. Do you have payment available? Yes, Your Honor. Jessica's voice was barely audible. She stood, walking toward me with a cashier's check in her shaking hand. She stopped 3 feet away. Our eyes met. Dad, just hand me the check. Her face crumpled, but she extended her hand. The check was for $47,300. I took it without touching her fingers. Is there anything you want to say to Mr. Stanley? The judge asked. I'm sorry, Jessica whispered, for everything. I know you don't believe me, but I understand now what I did, what I became, and I'm sorry. I looked at her, saw traces of the girl I'd raised buried under consequences and regret, but I felt nothing, just an empty space where a relationship used to be. Thank you for the payment. I hope you learned from this. That's it? Her voice cracked. That's all you have to say? What else is there? You committed crimes. You're facing consequences. The debt is paid. We're done. We're done? After 35 years, we're just done? Jessica, we were done the night you stood in my study and watched Jeffrey scream at me. We were done when you opened credit cards in my name. This is just the paperwork. I can change. Maybe you can. I hope you do. But you'll do it without me. You showed me who you are. I believe you. Judge Morrison cleared her throat. The restitution is complete. This case is closed. I stood. Jessica reached toward me. Dad, please, don't leave like this. I stepped back. I gave you 35 years of chances. Every birthday you forgot. Every dinner you skipped. Those were all chances. You used them up. Her lawyer guided her back. Jessica was crying openly, gasping sobs that echoed in the quiet courtroom. I walked out without looking back. Henderson caught up with me. That was harsh? That was honest. She's broken and she'll heal or she won't. But it's not my responsibility anymore. I flew back to Montana that evening. Tom Harris picked me up from the airport. All settled? He asked. All settled. How do you feel? Lighter. The next morning I opened my shop. A woman walked in around noon. I'm Nora Walsh. I live 2 houses down. Tom mentioned you make beautiful leather work. We talked details for a custom belt for her brother. Before leaving, she paused. Tom also said you're a fisherman. There's excellent trout fishing near Glacier. If you'd like company, I know the good spots. I smiled. I'd like that. Next Saturday, I'll pack lunch. Sounds perfect. That evening, I sat on my porch with whiskey, watching the sunset paint the mountains orange and gold. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Dad, please, can we talk? I need you to understand. Jessica. I read it twice, felt that old pull, that instinct to fix, to forgive, to give one more chance. Then I deleted it, blocked the number. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes, not out of cruelty, out of wisdom. I looked at the mountains, at the sky, at my workshop, where I created things of value. Thought about Nora's invitation, about fishing and simple companionship, about respect earned, not demanded. I'd learned the most important lesson. You teach people how to treat you. If you accept disrespect once, you invite it forever. I'd stopped accepting, I'd stopped being a resource, and started buying a person again. The old cowboy had become something better. Not bitter, not broken, just free. And freedom was worth everything I'd given up to find it. Tomorrow would bring new customers, new projects, honest work, and earned respect. Tomorrow, Nora and I might plan that fishing trip. Tomorrow, my life would continue on my terms. Tomorrow, Jessica might call again, but I wouldn't answer. Some lessons can only be learned by living with consequences, and some teachers have to walk away to let the student grow up. I'd taught my final lesson. Now I was just living my life, and it was, finally, enough. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.